How's everybody doing?
Kevin, I see Craig Anderson met your deadline. The other day, you got it all taken care of.
Yeah. Obviously, as I said to you the other day, we've been talking. I'm going back to during the season and just making sure we were on the same page. I have a lot of respect for Craig and the way he's not just the career he's had, but the way he handles himself professionally. I think he had a big influence in our locker room in terms of being a player that's done a lot in this league, but also being a player that gets up every day and works to get better and takes care of himself. And you look at our young team, but especially our young D-core. I do think it's very important to have someone that there's some stability in terms of the presence and what he brings, and I think he had a big influence on that D-core. So excited to have him back. It says a lot about Craig and his family, and also how he feels about the coaching staff, the players, the organization, because I don't know if this time last year, if he thought maybe this could be 1 year, but I think he had fun and he sees something special building. And actually even said to me, in all my years of playing, I don't know if I've enjoyed myself more than I did last year. So, we're excited, and now we'll just keep working on what's next.
I know you wanted him back, but how much did you sense that he was waffling, and how much were you kind of holding your breath waiting for him to decide?
Well, I don't think there was ever, in my conversations with him, a sense that he was waffling as much as he just wanted to make sure that he felt that he could perform at the level that he wants to perform at. So he wanted to take a little bit of time. He wanted to decompress from the season, spend the time with his family, and then just be honest with himself about where his body's at. And even just as recent as a couple days ago, he said this is as good as he's felt in a long time. He's training hard. He feels ready to go. And so I think someone with his experience had to get through a lot of the personal and the family things first, and then get to having an honest evaluation about did he feel physically that he could perform at the level that he needs, that he wants to perform at. So I wanted to be respectful of all that and have honest conversations back and forth, which is what we did, and got the call from him just recently that he was ready to move forward. So
how much, when you look at goaltending, you have UPL, how much are you still looking for other goalies, or what is UPL's role in all of this?
Well, we're going to, it doesn't change in anything in terms of the conversations that we're having right now and looking at different options. As I've said to you guys before, I think that, we have to be in on every conversation. We have to be open to every possible scenario, which we are. And, you look at some of the potential trade partners around the league, or if you look at some of the goalies that could be on the market, they come at a high price. And maybe right now for us, that's something we're going to have conversations about, but may not be quite what we're comfortable doing. They might be looking for a player or a player and a top prospect that we're not comfortable moving. And that doesn't mean we don't like the goalie or want to make a move for that particular goalie, but it just means that we're not willing to compromise and pay the price that might be needed. So we're going to continue to have those conversations. We're going to look at all those things. But we're going to do what we think is right for our team and our organization now, balancing the future and the long term and everything like that. So the other piece of your question is UPL, and I've said all along, I really feel strongly that he's going to be a very good goalie for us. He's showed when he came up last year that he was composed. He had a presence in net. He was giving us a chance to win hockey games just by being stabilizing force back there in the NHL games. I like the way he fought through different things in the American Hockey League last year, and even in terms of a goal might go in he didn't like. He didn't get small and look defeated. He actually got a presence about him. I'm going to stop the next puck, and I think that's a maturation that I wanted to see out of him. But he's had battled some injuries over the couple of years. You'd like to see him have some more games to this point, but we believe in him.
That's what I was going to bring up, Kevin. It's just as well as the flashes that UPL has shown, and as well as Craig played when he was healthy. Both have a bit of a history. I mean, Craig's old, young by my but just,
You better not say that to him when he gets here. I mean, careful.
Well, he's young by my standards, but just what concerns do you have with the fact that there is a bit of an injury history there, and you don't want to get caught in the same goalie situation of the carousel that you had last year?
Yeah, I mean, for sure you look at everything. I think we're understanding and we're realistic. You look at Craig Anderson. I don't think going into this any of us were expecting, okay, he's going to play 60 games. That's not anything that we've talked about or looked at. But what we've had honest conversations back and forth was, how do you feel and where are you physically? And we also have to trust what Craig's telling us and how he feels his body is and preparing. So you look at that. Can you plan for the amount of injuries that happened last year? Is challenging. Can you predict the future and say that the types of things that we went through? No, you want to put yourself in the best position you can. You make the best decisions you can. You try to prepare for scenarios where you may end up being in that situation. But at one time last year when you're on kind of number 5 and 6, it's tough. But that's where I go back to. I know I've answered this question before. What can you control versus what you can't control, especially on the injury front, and that's a challenge. But certainly we understand and we look at all of that as we put this together.
Is Dustin potentially still in the league?
Yeah, I've spent some time with him at the end of the season and his agent as recently as a few days ago, and just made sure that he knew that we're working on all of this. We're working on how we're putting the pieces together. We do see that he is a guy that we know we're going to get one. We know he's very even before 2 years ago, when I go back to before he came up to Buffalo, he was a very positive influence in Rochester when he was there. So, definitely a conversation we're still having as we kind of move forward here.
Kevin, how tough is it to stay patient during this process when you have so many young goaltenders that, and it seems like goaltender right now is almost one of the missing pieces to making this team a playoff contender? And how difficult is it to stay patient with Levi, Portillo, and some of those guys, especially in UPL, waiting for his development?
Well, I guess maybe I look at it a little differently. I get excited about it. I really feel strongly. A player like Devin Levi is going to have a chance to be a really good goaltender in the National Hockey League. I've watched him quite a bit dating back to before we made the trade, and then watching him this year. Not just the way he handles himself on the ice, but his maturity and his self-awareness and evaluation of his own game and what he works on, and just very impressive. So I get excited. Sure, you want everything right now and you want that to happen, but the one thing I do know is you have to be patient in terms of committing to the plan, sticking with it, understanding that there is a development process that you need to go through, and you can't rush that. So that's something we talk a lot about, but patience is important, but we're going to do everything we can to win hockey games. We know that. We want to help our players get better. We want our focus. Donnie Granato and I just talked about this yesterday. Our focus as we look at our team right now is we have a lot of really good hockey players that we think can get better. So we need to focus on those players. How do we get them better? How do we continue to put them in a position where they're gonna push and improve? Because that's a big part of how we're going to take a step. So we want to win hockey games. We want to develop our players, and we want to make sure that we're rounding it out to give ourselves the best chance to keep getting better and improve.
Kevin, how is the first in-person draft for you going to change the dynamic compared to the last two?
Well, I can tell you this, Mike. I won't have 50 note cards that in front of me so that people could see or cameras can see, because I could, when you're up in the war room, you can hide it a little bit. So that will change. I'm really looking forward to it because I've always felt like this.
That's fine.
Yeah. He's got to buy you guys a beer later. There's nothing replaces communication back and forth in person. I ain't nothing. So for me to look over at a table and to be able to walk over and have a conversation, there's nothing better than that. So I'm excited for that. I'm also just excited for having all of our staff together, and Jerry and his staff, the amount of work these guys do throughout the year is a ton, and to have everybody come together and hear the name that we call and names that we call, be able to be part of that and shake hands. I just think that's a big part of this job. So I'm excited for them for that reason as well. And I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but I think in the last month there's not a person in the hockey world that I have run into that didn't say I'll see you in Montreal. So I don't know if they're going to have enough hotel rooms in Montreal to fit everybody, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Kevin, going, and maybe Jerry can chime in too at some point, but you took 4 Russians last year. And given what the uncertainty of the situation is, what is the status of them for one? But I guess how do you approach that entering this draft knowing the uncertainty there?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my answer, and Jerry can chime in as well. But when you look at last year, we felt we got really good value with the picks where we took the players. You certainly take into account some of the unknowns. Obviously the world's changed a little bit since a year ago even. But what we've talked about and we've asked our staff to do is let's evaluate them as hockey players first. Let's put our list together. Let's not worry about where players are from. Let's put together our list, and then we can put a little asterisk. We can look at it and have the conversation. In terms of how we kind of move forward on that, we'll see. What we will be open to is if we get to a spot in the draft where we feel that there's real value there, then we're gonna talk about that. So we're open to that. As you know, we have signed Kisakov. We're working on processing all that. Hopefully, you guys are able to see him at development camp, and if not, hopefully he's here by training camp. So we're gonna do the best we can. Everybody's dealing with it. We're certainly mindful of it, but I guess that's the way I look at it. But yeah, Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll get outside my realm a little bit. He mentioned Kisakov, so just to close off last year's class of the 4 Russians, he's under contract. Sardarian is going to be playing at UNH next year, so that's a very positive development and was part of our excitement with Sardarian and that development path for him. And then the other 2, Novikov and Poltapov, were still extremely high on as players. But we knew, with all these players, it would be, a 2 or 3 year process like any player, taken maybe outside of the top 3 or 4 in the draft. You're going to wait a few years on these players. So that's been a very positive experience from my perspective with that draft class and taking the 4 Russians, which were obviously was a big story last year. And, we'll do the same thing this year. As Kevin said, we've rated all the players. We have them at a spot on our list. As we would always have them, and then at some point we've had a lot of discussions already, but we'll have to make a decision on where to take them and where we think they become a high value pick for us.
The one thing I would add just quickly on the Russian, I want to make a point too. Our Russian scout's done a tremendous job, Ruslan, and he's actually integrated into our player development in some ways, working as translator, setting up, Zoom calls with our player development staff, just to make sure that we're communicating and we're talking about what Buffalo's all about, what our organization's all about. And, Adam Mayer and his staff have done a really nice job there. So that's part of it too. Sometimes the communication, even if you don't speak the language, is critical just to make sure those players understand what we're all about here. And ultimately, like Jerry said, it's not a rush. It's that we think we have really good talent in those names that we called, and we look forward to whenever that time is that they can join us.
Yeah, and I think our staff's done a great job. A little bit more so this year. Ruslan, Frank Musel, Anders Forsberg, myself, Jason Nightingale, getting over and seeing a lot of the Russians this year in person in various tournaments and settings this year. But obviously Ruslan and Frank the most. So notwithstanding the fact that there were some challenges, with the World Juniors being canceled, the Russians not coming to play in the under-18 tournament, not being at the Combine. I mean, we do have to factor some of that in. We just haven't had as much access as you would have had to some of these players 3 years ago. But we have had a lot of live viewings of them this year.
As you two look at the development of your 2 young goalies in Portillo and Levi, is one ahead of the other right now as far as their development and what they're doing?
No, I honestly, Paul, I think it's a tricky question because you can change year to year. We think they're both very good prospects. I mean, you look at Devin Levi. winning the Richter Award, the top goalie in college hockey. And I'll reiterate what I said earlier. I love the fact that he went back to school purposefully to feel the pressure of having won that award, being the top goaltender in the country, and having the expectations. He wanted that, feeling that pressure. I think it says a lot about him and the maturity. Eric is a goaltender that played on one of the top teams in the country, gave them a chance to win every night, and he's. I mean, you look at 2 years ago, didn't get a lot of games, and then took over the net and played almost every minute. So honestly, both of them really good prospects. So. But we also know that you just have to stay the course, and let them develop on their own time.
Jerry, you don't have the number 1 pick this year, and the top of the draft has a good deal of uncertainty, and certainly starting around number 4. So how do you guys approach this, assuming you stay at 9? Do you mock this out for all these different scenarios of who goes 1, 2, 3, or what's the approach with this pick?
We do it the same every year, and we spend a lot of time. It doesn't matter where we are on our list. We spend an awful lot of time getting the players in order on our list, and the reason we do that is we're going to stick with that list, certainly through the first 3, 4, 5 rounds, I would think. Now it is unique this year. In that we have a lot of draft capital with the 3 first-round picks and the 11 picks total. So in any year, and it happened last year, something can change a day or two before the draft and you end up with an extra pick or end up in a slot that you weren't ever anticipating you were going to be in picking. So the last thing you want to do is to be caught off guard and not be prepared to take a pick at a certain range in the first, second, or third round. So we've spent just as much time, looking at 1, 2, and 3 as we did last year when we were picking 1.
Jerry, what kind of you talk to people and once you get past, like Mike was saying, once you get past those first 4, no one seems to have a handle on the order. Like, what kind of draft is it once you get past those first few guys, I guess?
I think it's a very good draft. I think we're going to get a really good player at 9 if we pick at 9. I get that question a lot, that there might not be a consensus, once you get past the top 3. I have a different view of that myself, actually. And we may get surprised, and we're planning for that. But I actually think the top 6 or 7, you can almost check them right off. I do believe that. But I do think, there's a group right after that, there's a chance you're getting just as good a player at 9 as you're getting at 4 or 5. So we're really excited about a group of players in that range. If you ever get higher in the draft, that's a great thing to do from my perspective. It takes some of the risk out of it, I guess. But I think it's pretty deep, right down to 20, 25, 30 on our list. I think it's a really good draft.
Kevin, general managers in the NFL have this card if they want to move up in the draft. It's like a formula. It's right there. Right? It's going to cost you A, B, C, whatever to move up. Do you guys have that in the NHL, or is it just your feel of what it's going to be?
No, we do have it. Sam Ventura, his group, has that. And what's funny about it is every team has their own, so they might not agree with you. But go back to a couple of drafts ago where we were able to get JJ Paterka. We were going through pick after pick after pick to try to find a way to move up to get JJ. That wasn't easy, but you went off the formula as you mentioned. So no, we do have that, and that's what we use. And that's in each general manager you talk to in those situations says, okay, I need to talk to the numbers guy because they got that in front of them. So no, we for sure do.
Kevin, with the depth of that draft, having those 3 picks, what are the challenges of you like a guy at 9, maybe he'll be available at 16. You don't want to reach for somebody that may be available at 16, and you don't know who's going to fall. What are some of those challenges when you're sitting at that spot and trying to figure out where to go with each of those picks, especially considering how unpredictable it is?
Yeah, you nailed it. That's, to some extent, that's the art of the draft, right? And that's why you spend so much time beforehand doing the work, because what you can't do is in those 3 minutes try to figure that out. It has to be sorted out before. And we have spent a lot of hours just in our room upstairs with our scouts and big groups. And that's why, as Jerry mentioned, sorting out your list is so critical, because you're right. At 9, you're going to look at your list and you're going to say, man, we got these 3 players. We really like all of them, but you can only call one name, and you have to make that decision. But that goes back to, if you've done the work before and you're prepared for that, you move forward. And then, balancing who could be there at 16, that's where I really lean on these guys, and I ask a lot of questions. What are the chances? Why do you think that? Where do you see this moving from our pick 9 to 16? What is this group of players? So I sleep well when I know that the work's been done, and I trust Jerry and his staff, and that the work has been done. We've had a lot of conversations. We're going to continue to have more. We have a few more days here leading up to the draft that we'll continue to work through things. But as long as we feel confident and work together when we walk onto the draft floor, then we'll be comfortable making those picks.
Do you think this is going to get crazier simply because all you guys are there and you can walk to the table behind you? And, you guys haven't been together for 3 years. Now you're all going to be on the same floor. Does that just maybe up everything this year?
Well, I do think it leads to opportunity. What I have learned over the last couple of years is the majority of things that ultimately will play out on draft day have been worked on for a while. So if I'll go back for weeks now, there's been conversations going on with every team, and you're talking about things that they're looking for. What are we trying to do? And as you get closer, that you're building on those conversations, so they don't just come together. Ultimately, then just within minutes, it's weeks and months sometimes leading up to it. Well, it could, but I guess what I'm saying is you have those conversations previous, and then you walk over to the table, and maybe that's how it, you get it to come together. So I think, to your point, there's more opportunity for that. But that's why it's so critical to do the work before and to be in those conversations before, just so you're ready.
Because I guess my thought is, obviously, if you chalk it out, everyone says Montreal's going to take Shane Wright or whatever. Well, everything could go a little haywire if that doesn't happen. If the Devils suddenly want to trade number 2, and so that could create a lot more chaos.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're 100% right, and you were open to that, by the way. We've talked about, this is what's exciting for us going into a draft with having the capital we do, having conversations with the teams ahead of us. What are they looking to do? Having conversations with the teams behind us. We've been doing that. We're open to both, and ultimately, when you're going to finalize a deal like that, then it's, how's the draft order gone? Because we might be willing to do something, or another team might be willing to do something, but it's only if certain players available. So that's part of it too, and which none of us will know until next Thursday.
You had a good young player in Samuelson who couldn't finish this season. Is this ankle injury going to hurt his summer workouts and that type of thing? Did he have to have any surgery, or can he start working out yet, or what's his plan now moving forward? Is it going to hinder him this summer?
No, he's good. He's good to go. I talked to him last week, and he's been training hard. We'll have him here for development camp, and probably be on the ice, and we'll see. He was dealing with one of those things that really he was feeling good by the time the Rochester season was going, but when he was pushing off, he was feeling it, into the bone a little bit. So we just trying to be really smart and really careful with him. But he told me as of last week that he's been feeling really good. He's been going hard in the weight room and running and all the stuff that he needs to do. So we're not concerned.
Kevin, you talked about it, like you talked about moving up, moving back. All those options are open. When you look at where this team is at, are you at the point where you can where it's time to start spurring this development, given where you're at? With an actual player, with actual talent to add to this roster.
Yeah, I think the way I look at that is definitely want to be open in having those conversations, but I don't want to do something like that if we think we're just fast forwarding in the short term. It has to make sense for us in the longer term as well. And I would use, like, last year, use Colorado as an example. They go out and they make a move. You get Kemper, and they looked and saw where their team was, and they made that decision, and boom, they won the Stanley Cup. But now you have to balance where is your current roster, where is your team, how close are you to, that in them they're an extreme case. They were, feeling like they're knocking on the door to win a Stanley Cup, which they did, So you balance those things, and I guess what I would say to that is we're open, we want to be in those conversations, but we can't do something just to hit fast forward and that we feel could, compromise ultimately, our plan moving forward.
Kevin, how are Kim Pegula's duties currently being spread through the organization, and what will be the impact of her absence for operations of the draft, knowing she's been involved with things in the past like hosting players and families and such?
Well, I mean, first of all, be respectful to. I want to be respectful to the Pegula family, and she's continuing to progress. Like we said the other day, we're all thinking about Kim. She means the world to us as a human being in our organization. From her role, there's great people in this organization that are leading their areas. We're going to continue to work together, help each other, and ultimately this is the Pegula's organization. They're, as always, they're going to have the final say on all decisions from hockey to business, and that's the way it should be. So nothing's changed in that respect, but I know sitting here I feel good about the people in this organization that lead their departments on the business side, and we're all going to work together to help this along.
Let's take one more. Go ahead, Bill.
Do you expect more 19-year-olds to go this draft, just based on how things have been the last couple of years?
Yeah, and I think I got this question last year too. It's been a trend anyway, the last 3 or 4 years. And obviously with some of the players, playing abbreviated seasons last year, and in the case of the OHL players, no season. There certainly have been some players this year that have popped, that maybe people weren't expecting to pop, or thought maybe they missed out on last year. So I do expect when you get to the later rounds, you see more of those players go that maybe missed the season the year before or only played a handful of games. You still have to balance that, with the rest of the draft class and what the development path is for the 19-year-old versus the 18-year-old. But I would think there'd be an uptick in that a little bit.
In development camp, just your guys, some of your NHL guys who have never been at development camp, like a Krebs or Power, will they be at development camp?
Yeah, everybody's going to be there. Everybody that's eligible that we're allowed to have there, we're going to have. And it's a great question, Mike, because it's every team handles it differently. What we talk to our players about, and I've called all those players, the Krebs and Samuelson would be just 2 easy examples, but put Quinn and Peterka and Owen Power in that as well. That from a culture standpoint, amongst the young players, they're leaders. These guys are leaders. They've played National Hockey League games, and these are going to be people that are going to be in this organization for a long time. And we want that culture where these guys are all getting together. So for me, development camp is really exciting because it brings the new players in that haven't maybe even been to Buffalo before. They get to learn about the organization. They get to meet people, how we do things. And then you bring in some of those players. It's funny calling them veterans. They kind of are veterans among young players, but those veteran-type young players that I think have a big impact. So we're going to have them here. And like I said, it's less about the on-ice. It'll be more skill-based and focused on development, but more about having those players together and growing together. And that to me is exciting.